Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for financial aid with MoneyThink and ALIS. We're going to get started in just a minute. We look forward to talking to you very soon. Hi, everybody. We're going to start in just another minute. In the meantime, if you have any questions that are just burning and top of mind around financial aid and college planning, please go ahead and type it into the chat and make sure that everyone can see it. Thanks. Good evening and welcome everyone to Financial Aid 101, also called the ABCs of College Financial Aid. This webinar will be recorded, Natasha?
Yes, that's right. It will be recorded and distributed to everyone tomorrow.
Perfect. We are so excited to have you all join us today. Let me go ahead and make sure that you get the chance to meet our panel. Today, you are joining ALIS Education's Director of College Advising, Natasha Desherbinen, along with guest speakers John Tamrat, College Financial Coach, and myself, Mara Curry, Director of Education Partnerships for MoneyThink, an innovative nonprofit that helps students seeking financial aid achieve college success by supporting financial decision-making. At MoneyThink and ALIS Education, we believe that families make college plans a reality when they understand how to manage financial aid. And that's why we want to share with you the ABCs of college financial aid today. A for affordability matters. B for build a financial aid plan. And C for choose with confidence. So before we get started, I'm sure you're familiar with using Zoom, but please just note that we're asking you to use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to go ahead and type any questions for our panel. We are going to save all questions towards the end, but it is helpful for us to see them because it might make sense for us to answer it as part of our presentation as we go. So please go ahead and enter them as you go throughout the day. And also, I believe that we may have a raise hand feature. We will use that also towards the end, towards our Q&A, in case you'd like to unmute yourself. But again, this will be recorded, and sometimes it is easier to type your question in the chat, so we do highly encourage that. So first, MoneyThink is a nonprofit organization that harnesses the power of people and technology to bring transparency to college costs so that all students are equipped to invest in their futures. We do this by developing tools like Decided to empower students like you to invest in the future by building technology that clarifies college finances. More on that later. We partner with amazing platforms like A-List Education, as well as local nonprofits and scholarship organizations to bring financial aid planning to you, the students, and to your families who are your champions. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it to Natasha of A-List.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you everyone for joining this evening. We're excited to have you here. To introduce A-List, we are a educational organization that serves more than 80,000 students and educators worldwide. We offer tutoring, college advising, and we also work with classrooms in schools and in nonprofit organizations. So we're going to dive right in to the financial aid process, what you're here for this evening. So I wanted to start off by framing this conversation with the cost of college. And this can be tricky because students often think of just the direct costs, but it's important to consider both the direct and indirect costs when you are trying to budget for college and comparing financial aid packages. So to start off, the direct costs include what we think of when we normally think of the cost of college: tuition, so what it costs to attend classes, mandatory fees, health services fees, and sometimes they'll have a health insurance fee that you can waive if you have your own health insurance, and room and board, so the cost of living in the dorms and going to the dining halls. Then there's the indirect costs. So these costs may or may not be on that financial aid package when you initially look at it. And so it's important to also budget for travel if you have to take a bus or a plane, or maybe you're having mom and dad drop you off. Books, which can be expensive depending on your major. Sometimes you can get a pretty good deal through renting books these days, but sometimes those books can add up and be as much as $500 to $800 per semester. So it's really important that students are factoring that in when they're budgeting for college. Supplies, this can range from anything from notebooks to shampoo and toothpaste, anything that you need to be able to live day to day independently. And then of course, personal expenses. So having pizza for a Friday night or some money to go to the movies with friends. So those are the full costs of attending college for a year. Now, when we look at the financial aid, there's 4 different types of financial aid that you may receive. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth on each of these types of financial aid later. So I'm not going to go into too much depth, but what you should know is that grants and scholarships are the free money. That's the good stuff. And then loans, that's what you have to pay back. And there's 2 different types of loans, which we're going to discuss later on. But you do have to pay those back eventually. So it's important to keep that in mind. And then we have federal work study. And so you or your student might be eligible for federal work study, which means that they actually will work on campus and receive money from the government for that job. We'll also go into more depth into that a little bit later on the presentation. Okay, so the FAFSA launched October 1st. So we are 14 days into October. So if you haven't applied yet, and you are a senior in high school or a parent or guardian of senior in high school, now is the time to fill out your FAFSA. You can log on the website here, and please keep in mind that you'll be using your 2019 tax records. So you use prior year tax records to complete the financial aid applications. And this is a really important document that you should fill out no matter what. It is free to apply. And you can actually even use a tool to pull your own tax information from the IRS. So it isn't super lengthy. It can get complicated, and that's why we're here to help you. But it is important that you fill it out and fill it out as soon as you start applying to college, if not way before those deadlines. It's open now. I recommend applying as soon as you can and no later than January 1st. It will determine your eligibility for things like grants, like we mentioned before, and also those loans and work study. So in order to receive the financial aid packages from your colleges, they need to have your FAFSA. Right? So you need to make sure you file that in order for them to be able to offer you any kind of money for financial aid. Okay, so before you apply for the FAFSA, you do need to get an FSA ID. And it's important that both the student and the parent create their own FSA IDs. It's very easy to get one. All you need to do is go to fsaid.ed.gov. You need to provide your name, your date of birth, and social security number. This will basically act as electronic signatures when you sign the FAFSA when you're submitting it. If you do not have a social security number as a parent, you will not be able to apply for a PIN. You still can fill out the FAFSA, but you need to make sure that you print out the FAFSA at the end, you sign it, and then you mail it in. So your student can still get an FSA ID, but you will need to actually print out and mail in the FAFSA in order to make sure they have that signature on file for you. All right. So before we move on, I want to take a little bit of a poll to see who's in the crowd and to see who has already started working on their financial aid applications. So I'm going to launch this poll. And if you could take a minute just to answer those 3 questions. Give you 20 more seconds to answer those questions on your screen. Looks like we got mostly parents in the audience, but a few students. Way to go, students. Way to show up. All right, we got a few who have already submitted the FAFSA, congratulations, and a few that still need to submit it. So that's why you're here, probably, to learn more about it. And about half of you have created FSA IDs and half of you still need to create them. So this is great. This has given us some great information as we're moving forward through the presentation. We'll keep this in mind this evening so that we know who is in the audience. All right. So when you are looking at applying for the FAFSA, the following people can apply: US citizens, permanent residents, refugees, parolees, victims of human trafficking. Now this is, a couple different groups, humanitarian groups. Some non-citizens are not eligible, but should look at the FAFSA to qualify for institutional or state aid. So we are going to talk about this later, actually just down below here. And any of the above whose parents are documented or undocumented. So if your parent is undocumented, you can, and your student is not, the student still qualifies for aid and they can still fill out the FAFSA. However, who should not file? If the student is undocumented, then you need to be careful about applying for the financial aid applications. You should look into if you qualify for any kind of in-state tuition, and you can reach out directly to the colleges that you're applying to find out. And you should only apply as a DACA student if requested by the school specifically. So if you're applying to the school and they ask you to fill out the FAFSA, then you'll want to make sure that you fill that out, okay? Some colleges often have special funds available for undocumented students, and they will ask you to fill out the CSS profile, which we're not going into a lot of depth with tonight, but it is important to highlight that it does exist. So in addition to the FAFSA application, the CSS profile is another application for financial aid that you may need to fill out, typically for private schools, but some public schools as well. To know if you need to apply for the CSS profile and fill out that application, I recommend going to the CSS. If you just Google CSS profile colleges, you'll get a full list of all the colleges that require the CSS profile. Great, all right. So to prepare for your financial aid applications, these are the documents that you will want to gather. You need your social security number or an alien registration number. You'll want a record of any cash savings and checking account balances. Investments other than the home in which you live. So if you have a second home, that will need to be included. Federal tax information or tax returns from 2019. And any records of untaxed income. So this could be Social Security, it could be any kind of Medicare benefits. And so if you have all that information, you're ready to apply and start actually filling out the application right in the moment. So right after you get off the webinar with us this evening, if you have all this lined up, there's no excuse, you can go and do it. Okay, so one of the most common questions that comes up when students are filling out the FAFSA is who qualifies as a parent and who should they list as their parent on the FAFSA. So I want to walk you through this really quickly. If you have a phone and you want to take a picture of this, you can, but again, we're going to be sending out the recording, so you can come back to this if you need to look at it. So quickly, are your parents married to each other? If yes, then you should report both of their information on the FAFSA. If they are not married to each other, the next question is, do they live together? If they do live together, you want to report both their information, even if they were never married, okay? Or if they're divorced or separated. If they don't live together, you then need to decide if you live with one parent more than the other over the past 12 months. If that is the case, if you're living with one parent more than the other from the last 12 months, then you will want to report the information of the parent you lived with most frequently during that time. If not, and you're splitting your time half and half, you want to report the information of the parent who supported you financially the most over the past 12 years. Okay, and if the parent has remarried, you will need to report the step parent's information on the FAFSA as well. Okay, finally, after all these steps, you'll receive, after you submit your FAFSA, you will receive your student aid report. It processes fairly quickly. You'll get it in your email. You'll have a little notification saying that it's processed. And you'll want to read over the information really, really carefully to ensure that all the information on that SAR is accurate. The student aid report also will include your EFC, which stands for Estimated Family Contribution. That number will be up on the top. Take a look at that number because it will determine how much financial aid you qualify for. If you are flagged for verification, they will let you know. And it's really important that you submit those required documents as soon as possible. If you are flagged for verification, submitting those documents as quickly as you can will ensure that the financial aid the financial aid packages at schools are able to be processed and handed out to you when you need that information. I think that was it. I'm handing it off to Mare. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Natasha. That was such an awesome overview of all the basic concepts we need to know, from the different terminology to explain the expenses of college, because when we think about paying for college, we've got to look at all the various components, and you touched on that, from what we get charged from the college to what we have to think of paying for ourselves. And you also touched on the different types of aid, and we really appreciate just the really clear overview that you provided. I want to go ahead and make a note now for our panelists that as we get closer to Q&A, there are questions coming in around investments, reporting of rental properties and savings accounts and things of that nature. So just putting that pin for when we get to the Q&A. So I just want to highlight for everybody that's joining us today that the reason we're focused, of course, on the terminology around college costs and the different types of applications you need to fill out is because right now you're at this step of your journey, right? The first step, which is to apply to colleges, complete the financial aid applications that you need to make sure that you can take advantage of all the possible financial aid that you qualify for. And we want to make sure that no matter what your financial situation is, just to reiterate what Natasha mentioned, complete the FAFSA. There are so many different types of aid your colleges are going to look at, so it's important that you really think about completing all of your applications as early as possible. But we also want to highlight for you that after this part of your journey of applying to the colleges, whether it's 2 or 20, after completing your financial aid applications, whether it's the FAFSA, any scholarships, the CSS profile, that after that, your colleges are going to receive that information. And then in addition to sending you your acceptances, they're going to send to you your financial aid award letters. And this is really the next step of your journey to decide which college you're going to go to. So we want to make sure that once you choose your college, we really encourage you to take the time to compare your options before you enroll. That choosing your college should be based on a really informed decision based on all the information you have. So what we want to talk about to you about next is this second step, when your college acceptances and award letters arrive. This step happens to be very complex and challenges not just students like you and your families, but also educators. So why is this so complicated as a process? You've applied to college, you've applied for financial aid. Now you need to wait again for your financial aid award letters. Why do students and families struggle every year in walking through their financial aid award letters and talking about college affordability? Well, it's because, as you see here on the slide, the nation's $1.6 trillion in student debt is really fueled by confusing and unclear pricing in the college costs because it's unclear in the award letters themselves. So we wanted to make sure that You complete all these applications, you look for these award letters to come in. If you don't get them, you make sure that you follow up with your colleges, you make sure that you get your award letters, and then you need to review them line by line. A new report on student debt and the class of 2019 shares that more than 6 in 10 college seniors who graduated from public and private nonprofit colleges in 2019 had student loan debt, and they owed an average of just over $28,000. And that's why we want to make sure you are thinking about how affordable each college is, not just as you apply to it, but of course when you make that crucial decision of where to go. Another thing we want to share with you is, as you're waiting for these financial aid award letters, you're going to see the terminology might look a little bit different from what Natasha just laid out for you. We've seen over 140 unique terms used to describe the word loan alone. 70% of letters group all aid together. So even though Natasha shared that there are different types of loans, there's work study, there's different types of grants, you may not necessarily be able to differentiate that in the different letters. And that's especially problematic since some of that money is going to be available before you start school, so you can use it to pay bills right away, while money like work study isn't earned and you can't use it to pay for expenses until later. So this problem of unclear award letters that are different from college to college has led students and families like you to navigate this process with limited guidance and clarity. And the information that's hard to find is how affordable a college is for you and for your family. And when we talk about what is an affordable college, I'll share with you in this next slide really how we break it down in terms of what it looks like in your award letters. But the importance here is that it's really a small percentage of colleges that are considered affordable. And for Pell Grant recipients, most of whom have family incomes under $40,000, you could still be 5 times more likely to end up defaulting as your higher income peers. So we want you to think about loans as an option, not as a requirement. And that's why we want you to know how to calculate your total cost and the total aid you've received, so you can make really informed decisions about how much in loans you're going to take. So how much in loans is reasonable? How much in work study is reasonable? Well, we think of it in terms of what you're seeing here, and we break it down into these 3 areas. So it's either affordable, somewhat affordable, or not affordable. At MoneyThink, we consider a college affordable if the gap is less than $7,500 for the year. This means that a student will be able to cover this gap reasonably with a combination of loans, work, and family support and student savings. A student will be able to do this by taking no more than $5,500 in loans, which they should be able to take federal subsidized and unsubsidized loans to cover, and or working 10 or less hours during the school year. And that number of 10 hours is important. The research does show that over 15 hours, it does become challenging for a student to balance their academic success along with their other priorities. So, you know, research shows that approximately 30% of award letters won't actually include the cost for you to figure out, is your gap $7,500? And that's why we want to make sure that you know these different metrics, and that we can consider a school with a gap between $7,500 and $11,500 as somewhat affordable. So that you know, again, this is an indicator for you to help make a decision. These schools can be an option. It just might mean needing more support from family to take out of your savings. It could mean taking out more in loans than the recommended $5,500. It could mean potentially working 15 to 20 hours. And as long as you have a plan for that, that's definitely your choice. We also consider a school with a gap over $11,500, which we see on the right column, as unaffordable at these schools. A student in this position may struggle a bit to cover that college bill even with family support. And remember, that's just for 1 year. So multiply that by 4 years, or maybe up to 6 years, depending on your college graduation rate and how well they serve the students in your major. A student in this position will specifically struggle to cover the college bill. And taking a large amount of loans, we would just want to make sure you're aware of, it can be risky. You could end up with high monthly payments when you graduate, and it's high to pay them back. You could risk defaulting on loans in the future. And again, back to working, while we encourage working and it's part of a holistic and comprehensive, college experience, over a certain amount of hours, again, can be detrimental to your success in the classroom. So now that you have a sense of what affordability is when it comes to college, you know, it's important to look at it not just when you're thinking about which colleges to go to, but actually right now when you're applying. So I'm sure the question you're asking is, then how do I pay for college? And that's where Decided comes in. And now I'd like to go ahead and introduce it to my colleague John to talk about Decided and how you can better prepare for your financial aid award letters.
All right, thanks, Mayor. All right, so Decided is your free tool to help you plan for college. We do this by helping you understand if the financial aid award package you are offered are affordable or not. So once you know how affordable college is for you and your family, you should also consider whether or not it meets other fit factors like diversity, graduation rates, or distance from home, and possible earnings. Now I'd like to introduce, oh, my bad. We can go to the next slide. So part of our mission at MoneySync is to bring transparency to the college cost so that all students are always equipped to invest in their future, because that's what college is, investing in yourself and in your future, right? So our goal is to put you, the student specifically, in the driver's seat by equipping you with all the information you need to make that well-informed enrollment decision. So Decided encompasses our 10+ years at MoneySync of expertise in supporting students and families with financial literacy and all of our college access work. We've also combined our expertise with student-centered design to inform the creation and development of Decided. This has resulted in a tool that is student and family-centered and really takes the guesswork out of college affordability. So you don't have to keep wondering, but know and can make your plan going forward as well. Currently, students and families are making a lot of ill-informed enrollment decisions, which is based on a lot of confusing data that we just went over with. And many advisors also don't have the capacity to support students in understanding their award letters. And even for college access organizations that are out there supporting students with that, it's very laborious, and this support is not readily accessible to many students. What Decided is doing is reshaping the way students can go about making their enrollment decisions by providing all the information needed in one place. This also then further removes some of the stress and the uncertainty that comes with this when making enrollment decisions for families and students. Next slide. Decided takes the guesswork out of college affordability by using our optical character recognition tool. Along with machine learning, we transform confusing and complex award letters that you receive from colleges into clear and consistent formats. Decided's objective is to help students make a holistic college enrollment decision, informed by an accurate understanding of the cost of their college options in order to increase the chance of students obtaining a bachelor's degree with a sustainable amount of debt. This can be attained by supporting students by one, supporting them to quickly and accurately understand their award letters, and two, comparing the affordability of their options, therefore enabling an informed enrollment decision, and three, knowing the full cost of college and preparing to have a plan to pay for it. One of the most confusing parts of award letters that students and families have stated to us over and over is understanding what the actual bill is. So essentially, what should they expect to be responsible for? So once you upload an award letter to a college on Decided, you'll be able to clearly see and understand what costs you are responsible for. Decided will automate the calculation of all the free money, so the grants and scholarships that we kind of discussed about earlier on your award letter, and that will be applied to the cost of attendance, and that will include the direct and indirect costs that we went over earlier as well. So once that calculation is done, the student will be able to see what is left over to cover under college bill, which is essentially the direct cost that's going to be due to the college. And then for any expenses not due to the college that's not billable, that will be reflected under life budget for expenses like personal expenses, travel, books, and supplies, and other things that will come up as a college student that you need to anticipate and be ready for. So Decided demystifies the process that's cryptic by design. After the students upload their award letters to the app, they can immediately compare all their school options, and the most pressing information like basic affordability is presented at first glance with colors and thumbs up, thumbs down markers to help them make sense of the cost clearly and quickly. And as students scroll down, they can access other relevant information about the school. Like we stated again, like graduation rates, which have an impact on how many loans you take out, how long you're staying in college, right? As well as the campus environment or the average salaries after graduation, because that may have an impact on your decision moving forward. So by simplifying key aspects of the college fit and providing all of these data points at your fingertips, students and families are more empowered to move forward with confidence and optimism with their enrollment decisions. Research also shows that 70% of college dropouts are linked to pressing financial concerns. A major factor to this number is due to students facing high, unexpected, or unplanned financial costs that have led to students taking on more debt to loans or need to work way too many hours while in college to cover these costs. To combat and mitigate unexpected and unplanned financial costs, SciEd provides further supplementary support through our guides and recommendations on financial planning and how to effectively leverage money from yourself. So that means that could be from your savings, from work that you've gotten before, from family support, or work study you plan on doing while you're in school. And then also how to package student loans and use that as part of your financial plan to cover the cost for the upcoming year. As you start your college search and financial aid planning journey, it's also important to know how you can use outside scholarships that's not given to you by the college directly, as well as student loans and work study to really make it a holistic financial plan for your year ahead. Now, some of you are already working hard, so some of you students are already working hard to apply for many outside scholarships, which is always great. But here are some tips to consider about outside scholarships. Unless you've won a scholarship, do not count that money when making an enrollment decision or making a financial plan. If you are awarded a scholarship and that money will be given directly to you, then at MoneySeek, we recommend not reporting that to the college and instead treating it as cash to pay for your school expenses that are going to come up. If you've been awarded a scholarship and we paid directly to your university or college of choice, we recommend checking to see what your college scholarship displacement policy is or reaching out directly to the financial aid office to find out. Okay, so just to give a little bit of overview for financial aid displacement. What that really is used to describe a situation where a student has received an award letter from a college and then tells the college they have won a private scholarship. So let's say they won a $5,000 scholarship. Some colleges may respond to this by reducing $5,000 amount to their grant awarded to them by that size of that scholarship. So that's really the displacement. Now, want to give a note there, they can't subtract that from your federal Pell Grant. That will remain intact regardless of how many outside scholarships you win. So then you might consider, well, what's the point of applying to so many scholarships then, right? Well, the good news is that about 80% of those schools won't cut into your grants for receiving outside scholarships. So pursuing them can still help reduce your dependency on students on borrowing loans or needing to work more hours while you're in school. So if your college does practice scholarship displacement, we highly recommend that you talk to your financial aid right away to see if they can first reduce your loan before they touch your grants, right? Because you know, grants you don't have to pay back, and you want to really minimize the amount of loans you're taking out on a yearly basis. So speaking of loans, let's get to that next part, which is for majority of students, going to college means you need to take out some amount of loans, especially for Pell eligible or low income students who will need to consider loan as an option. So it's important to know what source of loans to consider and how to utilize them. So federal subsidized and unsubsidized loans are very good options because they offer competitive interest rates, potential favorable terms, repayment options, and potential loan forgiveness depending on the career and jobs you have after graduation. Subsidized loans, even more so, are the best because you don't accrue interest until after you're done with school. And again, I want to highlight, for you to have this option, you need to complete your FAFSA because that's what enables you to have the option to take these loans out. So even if you consider your family makes too much money, they're not getting grants, it's still really critical that you apply for FAFSA so you have access to these loans first rather than going to private student loans. So student loans can be a good investment when you are making a well-informed decision, right? So this means that if you enroll at a college that will really serve and support you in reaching your goals, then the loans you take out can really turn out to be a really good investment towards your future. However, if you don't make an informed choice about your college and you rush it or choose what others tell you to choose or just go by name recognition or popularity, it may not be a good investment if it leads you to have more time spent completing your degree, so maybe graduating 6 years or taking even longer, right? Or going and then not even completing your degree at all. Now you're stuck with that debt, you don't have the degree to utilize, right? So on that statement, we want to also recognize that private loans may be something you consider. And if you are considering them, recognize that the most risky options that you have available to you to make sure that if you're going to use them to afford college. So when you're doing that, it is even more crucial to make sure that you're making a smart choice that really aligns with your future goals and objectives. Because that's an investment you're putting down. You want to make sure you get the value of it, right? Okay, and the next thing we want to go to is work study. So students can sometimes get confused about work study and how it can be used as part of their financial planning for college. Work study in general are jobs that are designated to a student who has completed the FAFSA application and demonstrated financial need to qualify for the federal work study program. So again, I want to emphasize, for you to have this option, you need to apply to the FAFSA. The work study program is very popular, and the funding available at each college will vary. So not all colleges are given the same amount, so they can run up really quickly at one college where there's plenty at others. With that in mind, the earlier you submit your FAFSA, the better your chance of qualifying and receiving that work study in your award letter. If you are offered a work study in your award letter, always accept them. View them just like as grants and scholarships by accepting them right away. But here's the caveat. Remember, just because you accept a work study on your award letter does not guarantee you these funds. You have to earn this amount by applying for the work study jobs that can be on campus, or sometimes they can be off campus at nonprofits that are designated as work study jobs, and then working those hours to receive those funds. Now, working while you're going to school is a great way to help you pay a portion of your college expenses. So that way you don't have to carry the loans and the interest that accrue. But the key will be always making sure to not overwork so many hours that it impacts your success in the classroom, because then that defeats the purpose of your investment, right? Of going to college and trying to be successful. And if you plan on working to help cover your costs, we recommend, again, working between 10 to 15 hours, because working more than 20 hours a week can potentially have negative impact on your success in the classroom, as well as taking you away from opportunities like networking, study abroad, or internship placements that you may not be able to take advantage of because you're busy working a lot of hours, right, to try and pay for your college education. So I know we've covered a lot, but I hope you've all found it useful what we've shared, and I'll pass it back to Myrna now so we can review some takeaways and recommendations, and then we'll get into our Q's and A's with the later.
Awesome. A huge thanks again to Natasha, who shared all the critical information we needed at the beginning around financial aid terms and financial aid applications. And great job, John, highlighting all the ways we can use Decided, which is free and releases in a few weeks, to track our financial aid awards and make sense of all these different decisions that we have to make around college affordability. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight just a few takeaways and recommendations from today's presentation while John and Natasha look at the questions that haven't been answered yet. And I will go ahead and defer to them. So I guess Natasha or John, go ahead and let me know in the chat who wants to go first with what question, and I'll go ahead and read that off. As far as takeaways and recommendations, folks, so can't highlight this enough. It's been asked, you know, if I make this much money, if I have this savings, if I have this investments, is there a salary or income cap? Please complete the FAFSA application. If that's what you qualify for, please complete the FAFSA. There's tons of different types of financial aid that you will be considered for with this one application. The class of 2018 missed out on over $2 billion in free money because they didn't complete the FAFSA, for some because they didn't complete the steps after that to make sure that they got their aid. Over 660,000 high school graduates who are eligible for a Pell Grant didn't complete their financial aid application, and that would have been money easily applied to their college expenses that they wouldn't have had to take on as loans or additional work hours. So even if you are not Pell eligible, completing the FAFSA helps you to get all kinds of aid that's available, whether it's federal, state, institution. There's also scholarships that will have requirements around these applications being completed. Next step is that if you're selected for verification on FAFSA or from your college financial aid office, do not be alarmed. This is more normal than you think, but it does require your response immediately. So, you know, just a note to that, that if you don't yet have one email address you're using to apply to your colleges and financial aid applications, we highly encourage you to use the same email or make sure you know which emails those are and check them regularly as soon as you apply, because they'll make sure that you find out if you have any verification documents that are required and when they need them by. And lastly, keep a lookout for our launch. As Natasha shared, you'll get the recording of this webinar by tomorrow. You'll get additional just notifications about what's cool in you at A-List Education in terms of resources they have. You'll also find out about resources that Decided has to share with you or MoneyThink has to share with you, such as Decided. So while waiting to get your award letters, you can explore and compare the colleges you are applying to based on some of these important factors that both Natasha and John had touched on affordability, diversity, graduation rate, location, even earnings. When you get the Decided app, so you're going to set it up, again, it will be free. You'll be able to upload your award letters, and it will help to make sense of many of the different topics we've shared for you today. And the goal is for you to be able to confidently enroll to your choice after comparing all of your options because you are informed. So just a reminder from us, try not to make an enrollment decision that depends on your needing to win funding from an outside scholarship. It will put you in a precarious position. You're basically saying, I'm going to go to this college and I'm betting on getting this large chunk of money, but if you don't and you're still committed, you have to then fill that gap with something. And as we shared with you before, we want to be careful and intentional about how we accept loans and how much in the loans we accept. So with that, those are our takeaways and recommendations. I'm happy to take it now for questions. So let's see, John or Natasha, which would you like to start with? Oh, actually, let me start off with just a few quick high-level frequently asked questions, just because in case it came up. For Decided, once you have access to it, are you entering your actual award letters? No. As I mentioned, you will be taking pictures and uploading it, so it makes it much easier. And this is a web-based app, so you can either use it on your computer or Chromebook or on your mobile app. How does Decided compare to what's out there? So again, our focus is really on helping Pell-eligible students. We deliver personalized and accurate college affordability matches, and we're working on a technology that will allow more platforms to be able to use our awards getting technology. When can students compare their award letters? Basically, as soon as you get them. I believe Natasha answered this on the side around when do award letters come in, and they're usually between March or April, unless you applied early decision, early action to any colleges. And is Decided secure? It is. We make sure that the confidentiality and privacy of our students' data is of utmost importance. It's a principle for us. So you can feel confident that your data is protected when students use this app. And I know that that's a fair question because we're talking about money or financial information. So I will leave it there. And now I'll see any questions you want to lead with, John and Natasha. I'm looking at the chat.
Yeah, we got lots of great questions, a lot of specific questions too. And so we're going to do our best to answer everything that we can possibly answer. So to start off, John, some questions about 529 savings accounts. And potentially if you could just talk about how that impacts the FAFSA financial aid process, as well as savings in general. What role does that play in the financial aid process?
Yes, so great question. So first and foremost, if you already have the opportunity and you have a 529 plan set up for your kid who's going to be going into their first year of college, I think that's a great start already, because essentially you're getting tax savings already while the money's being built to utilize it. One recommendation or suggestion that I could put within that is really trying to think about how you want to leverage the loans that you're getting with a 529 saving plan and when to use them at the right moments, right? So with knowing that the interest rates are super low right now and knowing that subsidized loans are at their low, like your subsidized loans have 0 interest, whereas your unsubs is at 2%, somewhere around there, you can really leverage it not just by paying your money in right now, but maybe saving it for down the year, right? For year 3, year 4, when these rates may go up. So you can position yourself in an area where maybe you're going to utilize loans a little bit more in the beginning because it can help you cover the gap, and then come in with your savings plan down the road when things turn around and maybe you're not getting as much financial aid in the future. As far as other investments and saving, our recommendation is first and foremost, if you're already working with a financial person, you should utilize them to create a plan that's best fit for you and your family, because these vary. Like there's no general direction or anything I can tell you specific for everyone. Everyone has different financial needs and concerns that come up. For some of the audience members that asked, well, if I have investments, will they take it away or will they have access to it? I want to reiterate, with the FAFSA, no one has access to your cash or money. And the only thing that FAFSA is going to do is really calculate how much money you can get in support from the federal government, from your state government. And on top of that, what resources are you able to access, like federal loans and like work study? So in that regard, if it's complex to do all this information, maybe you don't have the support of a financial person directly with you, I would really recommend you utilizing the FAFSA IRS data retrieval tool, because that in itself just uploads all the required information you already have with the IRS into the slot. So if you're worried about, am I going to put it in the wrong way? I don't want to make these mistakes. If you have that option when you're going through that application, use that, because that kind of streamlines the process for you. So then make sure that you don't list certain incomes in the wrong spots. So outside of that, again, outside of using that tool, my general recommendation is if you're really worried about investments or other things, how they may impact you down the road, really get in touch with your financial person that maybe you're utilizing for your taxes currently.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, John. A quick follow-up to that would be, can you use your 529 to pay for the loan or cover loans?
Yes, great question. And that's kind of what I was trying to tie it back into. Sometimes it's worth taking out the free, no interest, $3,500 loan, right? And then wait and save that money and then figure out, okay, maybe I want to use it to pay the loans and not the expenses, because the way they're being treated. Just a caveat to support that, I have a younger brother who's going through the same process, and I'm actually guiding my mom and my younger brother with that same idea. So we already planned for him to take out the full $5,500 in federal loans, right? So we know that $3,500 has no interest on it. And the goal is, if he does his work study like he's supposed to, and it's not over too much work for him, and he's able to cover the rest on his own, then the idea is to actually use the 529 plan that's been set up to pay the unsubsidized loan that has a 2% interest rate right away, you know, or depending on what happens, save it for future years. But yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question, how early prior to high school graduation can the FAFSA be completed to have an idea of what a student would qualify for?
How early can you complete the FAFSA, essentially, right? So you can't apply for the FAFSA when you're a junior, because you need to have certain credentials that match up showing that you're a senior. So it's really hard to do that, but you can get some general guidance or understanding. So if you know your family is eligible for free or reduced lunch or things like that that are giving aid from the government already, then you can assume pretty strongly that you're probably going to have access to Pell eligibility and other access points. Now, for the families that are not going to be eligible for those services, right? So maybe you're higher income or you have more money, you still need to do FAFSA again, as we spoke about, because it still gives you the option for these loans. What we've seen happen a lot of times for a lot of families who assume automatically, well, our family's not going to get a Pell Grant, we're not getting any scholarships. That may be true in your circumstance, but things can change. We saw with COVID, right? So you also have the option to appeal. So just because your FAFSA from last year is stating your earnings are a lot much more, and your EFT contribution shows really high numbers, there's valid points when you should go appeal to the colleges, letting them know, hey, COVID has done big financial impact on our family, or medical expenses have come up. And when you can show that and document it, you can actually then maybe reverse it. So then your financial aid counselor at that college can potentially provide you more financial aid that you may not have thought was available before.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm just going to add on that one of the tools that you can use prior to senior year would be the FAFSA forecaster. So you can actually, I'm going to put it in the chat here. If you go to this website, say your student is a sophomore or junior, you know, your income may vary year to year, so it might not be exact, but it can give you an idea of what you might be able to expect to receive in financial aid. And the other resource you can use is the net price calculator found on individual colleges' websites. So if your student has a college in mind that they're interested in applying to, they can go to that website. Every college is required to have a net price calculator on their website. Now, keep in mind, if you're a freshman or a sophomore or even a junior, tuitions might change a little bit for next year. And so there's, or even the year after that, right? So there's going to be some variation there, but it can give you a good idea. And I just recommend typing in the name of the college and then net price calculator. I'll write that name in the chat so you guys can take a look at that. Okay, John, we have a few more questions. So let's see. If married parents file separately, here's some, I'm going to throw you some hardballs. So if married parents file separately, whose information should go on the FAFSA?
Yes, so that kind of goes with the previous slide that we showed, but to explain a little bit further, again, it's not going to be based on the parent who claims the student on their tax return. So it's not related to that. It's much more based about who the student is living with currently, right? And we provide certain who's supporting them throughout the year. So if they're living with only one parent most of the time, even though the other parent is claiming them on their taxes, that doesn't matter. It's the parent that they're living and being supported by. So that's the case to look at it. That's why the parent FSA, FAFSA may be different than the tax dependency.
Great clarification there. Okay, excellent. Okay, another complicated one. I believe I need to list my rental income property, both property value and income, but I have a mortgage too. Can I deduct the mortgage and expense against the value and income?
Yeah, so again, when we're getting to these specifics, I just want to clarify with the IRS data retrieval tool, it will actually just take the information you directly need. And within the FAFSA itself, they've kind of streamlined a little bit. So they're specifically asking for certain line items. So usually you won't have to do all those calculations. They're going to specifically ask you what line item they're looking at to get an encompassing view of what your financials are. So they can then determine what is the estimated family contribution.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, another complicated one. If you are divorced and still appear to have a home loan as it appears on the credit report, but it was taken over by the ex, at least in payments, yet still is in my name on the loan, do I have to list this? Technically, I don't make the loan payments, but are there verifications done in relation to the application?
Yeah, so again, with this one, if it's something that shows up on your tax line item and you're gonna have to list it on your FAFSA, then yes. But the caveat is, again, I would say go to your college, all the colleges that your students apply to, and appeal, and then make that case there with them. Because the financial aid counselor at those specific colleges is the one who can then reverse that or make changes to those appeals, right? So do everything you're supposed to do on the FAFSA aspect of it, whatever line item. And if there's certain things you need to clarify or you have a very valid case, then go ahead and show that support by reaching out directly to those colleges' financial aid office.
Perfect. Okay, great. Are debts taken into account, like mortgage, credit cards, car loans, etc.?
So yes, no, but that's hard to just answer in that full overview again. They're going to take it by line items based on specific numbers they're looking for in your tax. They won't necessarily, just because you have credit card, say that your estimated family contribution is going to be lower. So if you're thinking, because I have credit card debt, that means that's going to impact it and make it more financial aid, that's not really how it works. They're looking at what money you're already coming in, getting in, and what they think is reasonable for you as a family to contribute. So that debt that you carried doesn't necessarily have a direct reflection on what you're able to support moving forward.
Great. Man, I haven't stumped you yet. Okay, let me try another one. Does Social Security for death benefits need to be reported in non-taxed income? How about a self-directed IRA?
Yeah, so there's line items specifically for where you put those in the FAFSA. And again, they made it a lot better than previous years with a lot more information and self-help guides and steps through it. So if you haven't filled out the FAFSA yet, I would suggest going through it, and it will really guide you all the way through. And once again, if that's already reporting your IRS and you're able to use the IRS data retrieval tool, you can kind of save yourself that headache by having that process be automated. So for those who are able to take advantage of that, I would highly recommend doing so, because if you don't, then you will need to print a transcript of your taxes and then go line by line and figure out which specific line needs to be entered where.
Excellent. Wow, okay, great. Let me see if I have any other questions that I missed. I think you talked a little bit about this with investment when we're talking about savings, but this is a very specific question I'm wondering if you can answer. So my wife and I are afraid that the financial aid offices at the colleges, which my kids will end up attending, will confiscate our savings. Most of our savings are invested in the stock market. Would investing the money in real estate instead shield it from college financial aid offices? Our income is very low, but we have some savings.
So to clarify, financial aid, they're not going to confiscate or have any access to your money. So whatever investment vehicles you choose, that won't be targeted. They're just using that information to figure out what your contribution will be towards your children's education. Now, saying that, if you're using just stocks, right, the preferred method would be then utilizing 401ks 529 plans because they give you those tax benefits that you're losing out by going directly to the market. So that's your trade-offs, right? So you can either get some of those tax savings through those investment vehicles that I just mentioned, or if you go without that, then you won't have that benefit. So that will be calculated into what your family can contribute to your children's education.
Excellent, great. And can you clarify, are retirement savings reported, such as a 401k?
Yeah, so everything that's reported in your tax return will be taken as far as like a combination, a higher overview. So again, the FAFSA itself will clarify what specific totals are being taken out. So if you want to make sure to have a bird's eye, like a granular view of like, what is it really that they're taking from my IRS numbers directly to my FAFSA, then you can maybe opt out of using the IRS data retrieval tool and go step by step. That gives you that clarification and knowledge. Okay, what is really being taken? What information are they viewing? What are they using to assess? That would be my suggestion if you want to really look at the detailed aspects of it.
Excellent. I think we have time for maybe two quick more questions. We have a clarification about the IRS retrieval tool. Can you kind of share more information about that and how they would access that while completing the FAFSA?
Yes, so in the FAFSA, it'll ask you if you already have a tax transcript and you've completed your 2019 tax return. And then if you meet certain eligibility criteria, then it will actually connect you to log into your IRS profile. And within that, it'll let you connect to your data. And so through that data transfer, it'll just take the specific line items that will be asked in the FAFSA and incorporate those answers directly into your FAFSA. And then when you're going through it, you'll still be able to see the answers and what they pulled through, except I think for this year, they might have removed that. So in a way, they're protecting the data visibility. So your students or your children won't be able to see it necessarily. It's just gonna be behind the scenes done for you already.
Excellent. All right, if I want to squeeze in one last question, which I think is an interesting one. What are the most common mistakes made by students and parents completing the FAFSA and the CSS profile? Are there any like common ones that always happen that are like, if you're filling it out, don't do this thing?
Yes, I think some of the common ones is just the complexity of it. Like if you're going through on your own, right? Adding an extra zero, putting amounts in the wrong places, which is why the development of the IRS data retrieval tool even happened, because those things were happening quite often, especially for students who are trying to do this on their own. Maybe their parent doesn't have the information, or they just give them the tax information. They tell them, you go do it. It's your future. You figure it out. So this kind of helps support that to make it a little bit easier. And then for the parents who are wondering, what if my student is going to cover their own financial education? Do I have to give the tax information? Yes, because if you don't do that, then your student has no access to any financial aid. So even the loans, they're not able to get it. And it's really, really hard for them to get that to be discounted by a financial aid counselor at the colleges, because they're really adamant that if you're living with your parents, have communication with your parents, that they have to fill it out. And if they don't, you're kind of just leaving them with nothing, and they have to try and find new ways. And that's how they resort to private student loans or like really bad debt that they take on at large amounts and not really understanding the implication it has for their future. So I just want to reemphasize, you've given that information. It's not going to do anything as far as them touching your account or taking money from you or any of that. It is literally just so they can see what they can expect from a family contribution, and whether you contribute or not, at minimum, it gives the opportunity for your child to have options available to them.
Excellent. That is so great. Thank you. Mayor, we can take it out with the closing slides.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And John, if you want a quick breather. So thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. We really hope you found this to be informative and useful. If you have your cell phone near you, feel free to scan the QR code on the screen to subscribe to our decided mailing list so you can get notified when that goes live. But again, thanks to Natasha, who I know is tracking who registered, and so we'll make sure you get the information as well. We're also going to post the links right now to these QR codes. You can also follow us across our social media platforms to stay up to date on all the work we are doing to make college affordability a reality for more students as we push for less debt and more degrees. Thank you once again for joining us today, and special thanks to Natasha and A-List for hosting today's webinar. Any final words for you, Natasha?
Yeah, I just want to let people know that if you have questions about college admissions, MoneyThink, they are the financial aid experts. That's what we brought them on tonight. And you can see I could not stump John, so they really know their stuff. If you want to talk college admissions, more about college essays or test prep, you can come to A-List for that. So I have a free consultation that I offer. The link to that is down below. If you'd like to sign up for a free phone call with me, I'd be happy to talk to you about college admissions this year, applications, essays, how COVID has, changed the college admissions process, and all the above. So thank you so much, John and Mare, for joining me this evening. It was incredibly informative. I know I even learned a lot about the financial aid process from listening to you both. So thank you again. And as I mentioned when we started, I will be sending out the recording tomorrow morning, along with the resources that John and Mare have highlighted on this evening's presentation. Great. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you for joining, everybody.
Thank you.